and welcome to another episode with The Unlibrarian. Today I'm going to be talking about how to go about training oneself to do the work that must be done, especially as your own business, right? This is all part of the larger building resilience theme that I'm talking about right now. So last episode I talked about organization, so like how you're organized, your processes, your documentation, your information resilience documentation, if I may. Today I'll be talking about training, how that figures in building resilience as a business or as a professional. And then the third one I'll be talking about next time is going to be believing in what must be done and accomplishing it. And dealing with some of the pitfalls that comes with those beliefs too, right? So today we're going to talk about training. I talk about training. I apologize. I end up interchanging words sometimes because there's training is literacy is training, and it's all education. So when we're talking about literacy, when we're talking about training, most people, when they think of literacy, they think of kids or adults who can't read. There are so many types of literacy out there. It's crazy. There's your numerical literacy, written literacy, digital literacy, health literacy. Oh gosh. Sensory literacy I'd even put in there for people with disabilities. Because literacy is about understanding a particular method of communicating with the world. So you have to have different angles of literacy, but how do you obtain that literacy? Well, you get that literacy through self-learning, self-culture, or you get it through training. Now, training can sometimes be free. It can sometimes be expensive. It can sometimes be life teaching you something, or learning from a mentor, learning from a friend. Education and learning happen all the time. And I think it's beautiful when that is maximized. Because there's different types of training too. I mean, these are all literacy training, but when we're talking more in the professional world and the business world, there are different types of training out there for transferable skills, soft skills. So like time management and communication, interprofessional collaboration, or interpersonal skills. There we go. Technical skills would be like Microsoft Word, WMIS. I do lump some of the safety courses in here, but really safety skills is another type of training because it does teach very specific things. So like your first aid and your CPR. And then you have your onboarding and orientation, which is the first few weeks at a new job, for example. Now, when you're running your own business, you are not the one taking the onboarding and orientation. You're the one providing it. So the better your own process is understood, the easier it is to train. Sometimes you need an external person to come in and be able to see where there might be training gaps, because it's being assumed that people have certain bases of knowledge and skill set that they may or may not have. And it's easy to miss those things. In a presentation I done, it's on my website for skill sharing, I get into like how to read people's body language when they're talking about skills so you can identify them. Because we're always asked, oh, what are you good at? But how many people's minds go blank, like blank, blank, blank at that question? I know sometimes I'm one of them. It's one of the most common interviewing questions too. What are your skills? It's like, but I'm actually good at so many different things. And there's some things I'm good at that I don't even recognize that I'm good at. It actually takes somebody else going, hey, you're good at that. So, hey, folks, if you see someone doing awesome, tell them they're doing awesome, because they may not recognize that's a skill, because to them, it's normal. It's natural. Like it's something everybody does, but not all skills are that universal. And there are certainly unsung skills when you're like, oh my gosh, you can do that. Like I remember when I would teach students bibliographic databases, and I worked with Mendeley all the time. I was a representative for them for many years. And, I would teach them how to use Mendeley, get everything in there. And I would show them at the Microsoft Word with the installer put in and everything. And I would put in a couple of references and I'd go down and I would hit create bibliography and it would just auto populate. And the students would be like, oh my God, what is this magic? Because it takes learning it. They were able to develop a new skill, A, because they thought it was absolutely wonderful, and 2, it was helpful, and 3, they needed it to be able to successfully complete their projects. I find it interesting when it comes to skills, how it works, because you have your projects, you have your team dynamics, you have your individual characteristics, and then you got your skills, which are usually divided up and spread out over a whole host of different experiences. Most of them, though, are entirely transferable. And that's what I love about a lot of talking with different people is you get to reframe your skills, because understanding skills is, again, highly interdisciplinary because it can cross-section. Myself, trying to apply for jobs in the private sector has been extremely challenging, because how do I translate all my academic skills to the private sector? They talk different languages. Skills have disciplinary boundaries in terms of how they're understood from one discipline to another. Finding somebody that helps translate that goes a heck of a long way. Really long way. Otherwise, you as a business creating your information resilience documents gets to highlight which skills are important for your business. What things are going to be skills to advance your business, to maintain your business too, because you have to think about maintenance. It's not always about advancement. And also you have to think about archiving as well to hold on to your information for evaluations, especially. So all these skills you get to decide, but they will also help you develop your job postings, your tasks list, and will help you better be able to orient your staff. Because when a person is going out to get training support, they do have some options, but it can be absolutely overwhelming because, you have, if you're within an office, you do have local resources, but then you can also go on YouTube, find demonstration videos, go on Google, find all the documentation. You can go on the manufacturer's website and perhaps find live support. Usually costs money, but there is live support. And then there are other people like librarians who do help with providing external training when it comes to literacy skills. I'm a librarian gone rogue to be able to give small businesses and professionals an option after they have left the universities, left the colleges, to be able to maintain and improve their skills. So when a person is going out and, first you have to figure out what it is you need training on, like I said. And then, of course, sometimes it's quite easy. Like you need to learn a new piece of software to be able to manage your finances for your business. Well, you're going to gather a whole bunch of things to do this. Hopefully not to be so overwhelmed. But you get your demonstration videos, you get your technical documentation, you get expert contact information, and a list of helpful websites. I like putting these in a document and a link and printing them off, or saving them in a PDF to share with other people, but also to print them off and put them in a binder to be able to keep it as corporate knowledge. Because remember, all of this training stuff is all your corporate knowledge. That corporate knowledge goes a long way to building a sustainable business. The more you understand your own patterns, be it as a person or as a professional or as somebody who's running a business, the patterns you notice are actually indicators you're always running surveys in your head to notice if something needs more attention, or if something's more popular or less popular. And sometimes it's, why can't we meet this demand? Well, if you're asking that question of why can't I meet this demand, it might be training. Why am I always turning over people? Why can't I keep people? What's happening with my retention? It might be the training. It does come down to people feeling not just satisficing, not just finding the bare minimum to do what they have to do and not fully understanding and floundering, but the more they understand the processes of an organization, of that organizational culture, the more secure they'll feel, the longer they'll stay around too. If the person doesn't have anything to obtain, to work towards, to have money to go to professional development seminars, they're not going to feel like they're advancing, and they'll get stagnant and probably end up finding something else that'll reawaken them. Hopefully, a manager will notice this and ask, hey, what training do you need? So like I said, I'm out on my own to help people with this training outside of traditional workforces, outside of traditional education sectors as well. So, I mean, I've helped entrepreneurs look at their how to build websites, how to use financial software. I've assisted with printer troubleshooting, troubleshooting software glitches in, almost industrial grade machines. That was kind of fun. And evaluating training needs. What do you need to learn? And a lot of that for me is listening and asking questions. This is where the reference interview comes in hand, because librarians are trained to ask questions to understand what references a person needs, what sources of information, and in this case, training, does that person need? So I have become very skilled at being able to suss that out, to be able to understand what it is that person needs to advance in their projects. And I enjoy it very, very much. Because you do have always the option of training yourself. You always have the option, well, not always. I mean, sometimes both of these are very subjective, granted. But training oneself versus external training, you can totally train yourself. I've done it many times myself. And what's great is because I've trained myself and made it easier to learn it later or to teach it to someone else, which is really fun too. So that training is continuous, and there's so many different modalities to go about it. I mean, there's training by consultation. There's the benefits of self-taught education. There's the bonus of formal education and the gratitude of informal instruction. And what all of this means is there are distinct overlaps here. Like we think that once we learn something, we don't need it again. Well, actually, you're just going up to the next level, right? I mean, you have your expert training. You have your intermediate. And then you have, of course, your beginner. I have a lovely little table I've been working on here. So, I mean, your beginner is your self-taught, for example. It's your in-house. That's, you gain the benefit of being able to learn yourself. Intermediate, you get into more of your mentorship, your informal instruction. And this is always met with gratitude because, I mean, somebody's taking the time out of their day to help you advance in your skills. And then, of course, there's your expert grade, which are certainly bonuses because not everybody can afford it. And there's a whole host of barriers to formal education, but it is a form of external training. I refer to these as like even workshops put on by organizations, associations, and universities. Like they can become expensive, or you can't travel to them, or there's tech difficulties. So it's not all the same. And you do have to look at all of these, and they all matter. As part of being an accredited health information professional, I have had to file for accreditations. And they do ask about each one of these, but they rate them differently of importance. They all matter, and you should be always learning, in my opinion. I mean, you can even use learning as a continuous evolution. It's always happening. I keep saying, like, I will forever learn, and even when I die, I'm pretty sure I'll still be learning. And it's true. I believe in that continuous learning and that continuous development. That professionalism, a huge part of that professionalism is the willingness to learn, that curiosity to better understand, to do better. Training can also be a refresher where, it's been a while and you don't have to go take the beginner course again. You can actually go looking for that intermediate or expert level course. If it's a refresher, you can start. Yes, you can go look at that beginner video again, but I bet you're going to be like, oh, I know all this already. Go to the intermediate. And if they're too advanced, then go to the beginner. Because refreshing your training is also very, very beneficial for you and your colleagues and your staff. And sending your staff for refreshers to keep up their education matters a great amount too. Training is certainly an element of resilience because the more you understand how to do something, the easier it is. The willingness to learn is part of resilience because if you're not willing to learn, you're going to stay stuck in that muck. To go out and explore and to understand the literacies you need to coordinate your life. Like someone who has hardly any health issues doesn't necessarily understand health literacy the same as someone else. The thing is if everyone understood the literacies as they should, it would actually help everybody equally. But people choose what's most relevant to them. And that makes sense. That's part of human nature. Part of human nature is also being a survivor, being resilient, growing, and learning. And one of the ways you do that in your lives is through training. I also find training can be good for overcoming imposter syndrome. I know everybody talks about imposter syndrome and all sorts of other fancy words these days, but sometimes you do need to take that beginner course, even if you know something, just to be able to be like, oh my gosh, I do know this stuff. Why do I think I don't? It's because you went through something, perhaps. Perhaps it was overwhelming for you. But remember, morsels, things take time, and you can do it. You can overcome that imposter syndrome and feel confident in knowing that, yes, I do know this. So keep trying. Maybe it's the different instructor. Try different videos. Because even if you end up feeling like there's no help available, there is. You have to keep looking. It's exhausting, but if you do have the drive to learn something, you will find the opportunity, even if it takes years. I'm finally going to learn about data analytics. Do you know how hard I have struggled to improve my computer literacy knowledge? It's not easy. And it's been years of trying to figure out just how to connect my knowledge of the relational databases and MS Access to the websites, to other ways of analytics and whatnot. I'm going to finally find out. Hopefully in a couple weeks. We'll see. But I kept trying. I didn't give up. And I didn't let my ego get in the way of reapplying and trying again. Because it does take an effort in gratitude. And it takes an effort in picking up your boots, strapping on them boots, and keep walking through that mud. So all in all, I'd like you to consider from this podcast How do you go about learning in your professional life? How do you support learning in your organization? How do you believe that training, literacy, and education, professional development, whichever term you'd like to use today, how does it build resilience in your opinion? Thank you very much for joining me again for another episode with The Unlibrarian.